So I'm here with you, Matt Kwan. Hello everyone, this is Matt Kwan. Matt, you're fresh out of court. How did your session go? Was that restraining order get lifted?
Restraining order. Yeah, basically just had a speeding ticket, pretty hefty speeding ticket that was several months back, and no, I have to pay the fine. I was hoping that the guy wouldn't show up.
The old Hail Mary, hoping the cop would sleep in today?
Yeah, I think everyone that showed up today, that's what they were hoping for, and unfortunately he was very by the book, so Officer Jewel, thank you very much, and I'll pay the crown it's due. But I got a reduced fine, so that's...
Just by showing up? I don't know what's the logic there, like why you've wasted our court's time and probably cost $1,000 worth of judge time and security guard time, so we're going to make you pay less?
Yeah, and they sort of take you into this room beforehand, and the cop one-on-one hashes it out with you. Okay, this is how it's going to go down.
The cop who...
Oh yeah, and I've disputed a ticket before years ago, and it happened the exact same way. They take you into a room, and then they say, well, you can plead guilty, but then I'm willing to take this charge away if you plead guilty. If you plead not guilty, you're looking at paying the whole thing. And I'm thinking, this is already tilted in favor of the cop, right? Mm-hmm. And of course the judge is also on his side, so... And he's telling me before we even go in the courtroom, okay, this is how it's going to go down. This is what the judge is going to say. And I'm thinking, okay, like, I'm just a law-abiding citizen, so I'm just going to go...
Mostly, other than speeding.
Yeah, other than speeding. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone does it, so...
At least you weren't texting while speeding, while brushing your teeth.
That's right, yeah. Texting and driving is very bad. Don't do it.
Yeah, never. Yeah. Although, if you get like a Tesla or something and it's got this gigantic screen that's 4 times the size of an iPad, you're allowed to poke around on there.
Oh, yeah.
And, select your radio station. That's okay, because that's not different. So
yeah.
That's very, very different from...
Well, I don't want to know why... How come whenever I see cops driving, they're always doing this and they have a giant monitor here? That's okay for them to be on the monitor and drive, but,
Actually, I believe our local regulation says that a cop or emergency response personnel are allowed to be on their cell phones.
Wow.
While they're on their duty.
As long as it's police business.
And I'm sure 100% of the time it is.
End of the day, we're all human, and I think we all make mistakes. So just take.
So you're $200 lighter anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, good. You didn't know what to do with that money. Anyway.
Yeah, it's okay. I didn't need that. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy.
You
swimming in money. I have a martial arts school, so I'm swimming in money.
You're out there making it rain.
Yeah. It's nothing to me.
So you run a school, and you work a job.
Yeah.
You do a lot of super fights, and your
as
new
many
dad.
as I can. What's that?
And your new dad.
And I'm a brand new dad. I had my daughter in March. She's a beautiful baby girl named Zara. And so it's been...
that's a lot of things to juggle.
Oh yeah, I mean just making sure that the child and my wife are happy and have the support that they need, and her, she's doing a fantastic job right now, and being there when I can't be there. It's a lot of work, especially working a full-time job as well, like you said, and running a full-time martial arts school. It's tough, but it's all working towards a larger goal, and it's been an awesome journey. So just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
So, it's funny, people who don't have kids, they waste so much time. They have no idea how much discretionary time they actually have. When I hear somebody without kids going, I've got no time.
Well, that actually used to be me, because I literally did have no time, but now I have even less time.
Less time than no time.
Yeah, so you kind of sacrifice sleep here and there and find a way to make it work, I guess. Being a parent is all about adapting. It's a lot like jiu-jitsu, some days are good, some days are bad. It's all about adapting and just remembering why you wanted to do it in the first place. And then when you're holding that baby, it's a pretty awesome feeling to have her look up at you, and you get that feeling inside. I mean, you're a father, you know what it's like, so it's all worth it at the end of the day.
I remember being a new double father, so I just had my second kid in 2006, and I'd gotten accepted into the Abu Dhabi trials. And I was working a full-time job, and I was doing grapple arts, and I was trying to parent 2 kids. And so I was like, how on earth am I going to train? And my solution was to meet up with a friend of ours, a guy that you know, Don Whitefield, and a student of his, at 5 in the morning at a jiu-jitsu club, and we would train for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Before I would go to work, I had to be at work by 7, and they all had to be at work. And it was a really dumb idea in retrospect. I thought I was being super hardcore, but you just can't keep on reducing the amount of sleep that you get. I mean, unless you're totally cranking tons of, artificial hormones in your body. Because, I mean, I immediately had like the worst, well, not immediately, within a month, I had the worst neck injury that I ever had.
Yeah.
And the rest of the body just could not heal. So how are you managing the recovery? Forget your training.
Yeah.
How are you managing the recovery on the limited sleep?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm really trying to increase the amount of stretching that I'm doing, and just trying to really be diligent in that. Like after 8.5 hours of work and then teaching for 3 hours, you don't really want to stretch and do things like that, but you have to force yourself to do it, especially if you want to compete. For me, going into a competition, or super fights, I know that I'm going against a lot of the time someone who has, their job is jiu-jitsu, or they're a full-time competitor, meaning that they're going to get, at least double the amount of hours I get on the mat. I get at least, 2 to 3 hours of training a day, which is, it's good.
It's a lot for somebody who's not a professional, but
right.
It's not a lot for somebody who is a professional.
That's right. It's about half the amount that I should be doing to try and reach the goals that I do it. Well, I mean, I train every day, so I'm my consistency, I think, is my strength. But I have to be creative and intelligent with the way that I train, and like you say, the way that I recover. There's many days when I'm at work in the kitchen and I'm just like, I do not want to be here right now. This is I should be training right now. I should be preparing for my opponent. So I already kind of mentally don't have that edge in competition, and just let for all the competitors out there that are maybe transitioning to a full-time jiu-jitsu career, but you need to pay the bills. There are guys like me who compete, try to compete at the highest level they can and do decent, right? So it can be done, and it's more about how consistent you are and the type of instruction you're getting. Luckily, I have Rob from Island Top Team, and I feel like his instruction's top notch. So so far it's proven really well for me in competition.
Yeah, you've been doing really well.
Yeah, I've been. Fingers crossed, I'm gonna keep doing well, but just
and mostly no gi recently. Have you done much gi super fights recently, or many gi?
Super fights I haven't done in a while. It's been mostly no gi, just because since I've sort of really worked in this leg lock system that Rob's developing right now, that's been my focus, and quite honestly, I find it more fun in competitions. I find
why?
Well, that's a good question. I think in the gi competitions and super fights, a lot of it has to do with positional play, right? Like, really the question, I guess, is more, are we talking submission only, or are we talking like IBJJF points?
Okay.
So, I mean, we can open a whole new can of worms talking about why I'm not a huge fan of IBJJF or whatever. Well, so many people, right?
Why are you not a big fan of IBJJF points rules?
Well, I mean, I grew up training with the IBJJF points rules. And it's awesome for your jiu-jitsu to give you positional, awareness and whatnot.
Right, so you just get this intrinsic sense that I'm in the guard, I should pass the guard, I should progress to the mount, I should progress to the back.
Yeah, progressing position, right? Whereas, submission-only competitions tend to be more like a cat and mouse game. So if the guy knocks me over, it doesn't matter, and I actually like this more. I like to look for the finish more than to look for,
an advantage.
Who can stand up. I find IBJJF is a competition sometimes of who can stand up, and that's not really...
You mean like in 50-50 or something?
Yeah, or like who can get the sweep, and then that becomes, all the people develop positions around certain techniques, but if you add reaping and leg locks and heel hooks, all of a sudden a lot of those techniques are now useless, because you put yourself into an outside ashi or something like that. But for IBJJF, it's great, right? I'm not a fan of, obviously there are many people out there who talk about like the reaping. I think it's a fictitious thing.
I completely agree.
I think, De La Hiva guard is way worse on the knee. When someone puts me in a bad De La Hiva, I feel like my knee is in way worse trouble than if I'm in, like a 411 or something like that. The whole leg going over across
411 being the most dominant leg locking position for...
Yes, many would say the highest percentage leg lock position. really heavily used in a lot of no-gi competitions nowadays. And I just, I have, now that I have the leg locks in my arsenal, I feel the desire to really use it in competition and showcase it, and I can't do that at an IBJJF level. Another reason that IBJJF, I haven't been rushing out, like my goal this year was actually to do Pans and Worlds at brown belt. I haven't gotten around to that. I'd never even, I haven't registered in the IBJJF as a brown belt this year. That's a big reason why too, is because you have to register as a brown belt now, I think. And that kind of deterred me away. It came off as a bit of a cash grab for me, and I was not really too keen on doing that, especially, I figured that there would be a lot of people kind of getting screwed during their matches, and sure enough, this year the Worlds kind of proved it. There was a few controversies about DQs and talking to the ref and politics, and I saw that, and I figured this just basically nails it home why I didn't want to travel down all the way to California to do a tournament like that, right? I would rather go in, do super fights, fight people that want to go for the finish, And
I suppose submission only, I mean, yeah, in theory you could get screwed by the ref, and I'm sure it's happened, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Two men enter, one man leaves.
Yeah, it's you're both going for the submission, right? Like there was a controversy where Galvao talked to one of the refs, and then his student won, and this type of thing. So I think there is a lot of politics
at the Worlds.
In the IBJJF in general. I think black belts are given so much more leeway than all the other competitors. I mean, some would say rightfully so because they've earned their place or whatever, but. Yeah, I feel like sometimes the IBJJF, the way that the politics are set up, for me, I like to go to the 411 a lot. And the 411 is a position where just the small hip adjustment, you can go for a knee bar, which is a legal IBJJF move. Now, if I enter the 411 going for a knee bar, is the ref going to see that I'm just going for the knee bar, or is he going to think that I'm reaping? So at that point, it literally comes up to that particular ref's discretion on the mat at that time. Does that ref understand leg entanglements, or is he just seeing your leg going over top? So that's where I sort of say, okay, I don't even want to risk it because I'm going to be paying a lot of my own hard-earned money to go down there and competing on this stage. And, if I'm just going to get DQ'd for something that's a big part of my game right now, maybe, and I think a lot of people want to see the submission-only rules now. I think the leg locks are, because of the Danaher Death Squad and all these guys are showcasing these leg attacks.
And guys like Dean Lister and Eric Paulson have been chugging along on that
forever.
Yeah. It's finally catching up.
It's catching up, and it's becoming, I think, even more sophisticated than it's ever been. And that's what's caught my eye and say, hey, I got to learn this stuff. Because when I take a fraction of what Rob showed me and I go to other clubs and roll with people, I can feel how effective it is, right? And
you just roll with somebody, this guy's got no clue.
Exactly, and people are constantly now talking to me like, hey, can we get some work in? Can you show me some of this stuff? And that's cool for me to see as a teacher and a competitor that, hey, people want to study or emulate or practice sort of the stuff that I'm doing. So it's just more encouragement, and I'm just more excited to use it in competition. I'm not exactly super excited to, see who can pass the guard or who can stand up. Although I've done that, and that's wonderful and a crucial aspect of jiu-jitsu. But I think we're all there to see a finish.
Now, what about, just to play devil's advocate here, because I agree, I enjoy submission only, but the devil's advocate position is you're by doing submission only, you're devaluing position. So you get guys flopping to the ground, and I've seen you do it.
Oh yeah.
Where you basically like a beetle on his back, and hey, take whatever position, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's fantastically fun to watch.
Yeah. It's
but if all of a sudden it came to self, I've got no concerns about you being able to defend yourself. If push came to shove, and some guy was trying to punch you in the teeth, you would very quickly adjust your game, and then you would rip his leg off of his body.
Yeah.
So I've got no concerns about you. But what about the argument that training in an IBJJF thing where there's a progression, a hierarchy of positions, translates better to self-defense than the submission only?
I totally think there's validity in that. Like I said, I started with the IBJJF rule set. I started practicing for the GI tournaments position before, all that stuff is wonderful. Like I've rolled with guys that are just submission only guys. You can tell by the way that they train that they don't really care about, IBJJF. I think both are crucial. At my club, On Guard, our mission statement is to have like a complete grappling system, and to help any of the students reach whatever style they want. So if they want to stand up and go for takedowns, that's in our curriculum. If you want to have a submission only style, or you're looking for leg locks and looking for the finish, that's in our curriculum. So I've always wanted to have all of those aspects in my game, and I definitely think, in a self-defense situation, things like being on top and pressure and things like that, passing and getting to better positions, 100% will help you out in the street. Definitely flopping to your back in a street situation isn't something that I'd recommend. But again, grappling is just divided up by different rule sets, and you have to play by those rule sets. So for a self-defense aspect, I definitely would recommend try to train as many aspects of grappling that you can. Like the last competition I did was in Edmonton, the Sub-Series Pro, which I won. And I remember Tom DeBlas actually commentating one of the matches, and he was saying, these guys are just kind of, not really going for it as much as I would like them to. And I watched the match, and I'm like, yeah, I'm flopping all over the place. The guy's literally standing up, and I'm just like flopping over. But that's kind of also the fun part about submission only. Like I said, it's a cat and mouse game, catch me if you can type game. It's not a.
And you caught the guy.
I did catch the guy, yeah.
What did you catch him with?
Ankle lock. Okay. I had one heel hook, it would have been 2 heel hooks, 1 ankle lock, and then the finals I took to the decision against Chadwick Rowland from, I believe, GB Edmonton. Really big, awesome purple belt out there. He's been killing it, and it was great to finally compete against him. And I could tell rolling with him that like position was sort of something that he was concerned about, whereas some of the other guys, we were okay to just flop around because it's a little bit less, you're not fighting for every inch. You can play. And I actually really enjoy that as a grappler, to compete under those kind of situations.
So when you're not, fighting for every inch, then sort of by definition you're living more in the transitions.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, jiu-jitsu...
If you're not completely fixated on the position, then it's more trying to catch them in transition.
Yeah, and most submission only competitions that I've seen are no-gi. So it's more about less about grips and grip fighting and stuff like that, more about cupping and controlling levers and whatnot.
I'm trying to think if you could characterize the Metamoris matches when that was alive, right? So the gi-based submission only as more position or more transition. I think there was a heavy element of position there, but there were a lot of big names from the traditional jiu-jitsu world fighting. So
yeah,
and they're still wearing a gi, so they're going to instinctively gravitate towards what they know.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's all about what rules are you competing under. There were matches in Edmonton where the whole match, guys on top, smashing. Yes, he's positionally dominating the guy. And then the guy would lock up a Kimura grip, not even a finishing Kimura grip. And the other guy wins because technically the Kimura position was considered like a submission attempt. But the other guy was on top for 80% of the match. So it's not going to help you necessarily in a submission only match to dominate the guy on passing and all this stuff. If you're not going for the submission or going for a finish, then you haven't really prepared your game plan for the rules that you're looking for.
I'm trying to remember, there was a boxer back in the day, a big name boxer. I don't think it was De La Hoya, but that era, and he got majorly screwed on a judge's decision, or a referee's decision. Anyhow, it went to the judges. He got majorly screwed, and they came and they asked him, how do you feel about it? He says, well, I could have very easily won. All I had to do was knock the guy out. If you knock the guy out, then the judges can try and screw you all you want. So I guess in the same way, submission grappling, no matter how biased the judges are, whether they value a Kimura grip over you holding side mount for the whole match, it's very easy to win. All you have to do is submit his ass or choke him out.
Yeah, exactly. It's submission only is anything can happen, right? Whereas in the gi, under certain rules where we're limiting the techniques you can use, it's a little bit more, it's more predictable, I guess, as to what can happen. But when you open up the whole world of leg entanglements and all that stuff, it's really more about who's up to date with their their leg lock knowledge and whatnot.
Well, I'm beginning to think it's almost like there are two jiu-jitsu systems. There's the upper body control. I mean, it's not exactly. There's sort of like the traditional jiu-jitsu schema of positions, and then there's the lower body positional schema of positions. And just as there's ways to transition from side, there's 10 different ways to go from side mount to mount. There's 10 different ways to go from standard ashi to 411.
Exactly.
Progressing through a whole bunch of intermediate positions, maybe going directly. It's almost like you've got to, if you've done all this jiu-jitsu, you now need to tack on that system of lower body stuff. And it's not just going for a submission out of nowhere.
That's right. And I realized that when I started training with Rob and he started showing me the leg entanglements, is that there is a whole nother world or system. Mm-hmm. I was traditional with my jiu-jitsu upbringing, so I sort of only saw the top half. Mm-hmm. The bottom, sometimes ankle locks, but they were kind of deemed as, they would never work, which they totally do work. You just have to have the proper technique. But like Danaher says, attack my opponent's whole body with my whole body. That includes the lower half too, mm-hmm. right? So it is a whole system down there that I think that's what jiu-jitsu is heading towards on the big stage.
I mean, this increase in no-gi is a lot due to things like EBI, but it's been around a long time. I mean, Abu Dhabi is a great example. That's been around since forever, and it's no-gi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Abu Dhabi is, like we were saying before, is non-discriminatory towards whatever background you may be as a grappler. And I enjoy
wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy, sub-only guy.
That's right. I recently did the Abu Dhabi trials in Anaheim, and it was a really interesting rule set because the matches aren't long. They're 6-minute matches, and the first 3 minutes aren't points, and then as soon as the first 3 minutes pass, the ref tells you points, and then you go, right? So it's an interesting rule set to prepare for, and it's like jiu-jitsu, it's really mental. It's a mental game, right? It's so easy to make a mistake, especially when you're already in the middle of a fight and the rules change, right? So it takes practice.
And now, here are a couple of knives!
Yeah, exactly. So
you're now in a gunfight.
So if you're a wrestler, I've seen people win Abu Dhabi trials just by, in the last second they get a takedown and then that's the match. But as we were discussing, it's not necessarily like the most exciting way to fight. Sometimes you're going to see...
It certainly allows a very boring way to game the system.
Yeah.
To stall, takedown, stall.
Yeah, and I think no matter what kind of... Like in all forms of grappling, judo, submission grappling, IBJJF, you're always going to have strategies to... as you say, scam the system, and
nobody wants to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately you're there to win,
right.
And that's why I like sub only, because you can go for it as much as you want, or you can play sort of a counter fighting game as much as you want, and it comes down to more I think self-expression. Whereas in other tournaments, you got to go, and then if you need to win, you got to do what you need to do to win, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more convincing than going for a finish. So
it'll be interesting to see if there's an equivalent transition from guys who are really good at sub-only, making the transition to MMA, the same way that we've seen guys like Damian Maia would be the very best example.
Yeah.
Super good at the positional game in jiu-jitsu,
mm-hmm.
making a very successful transition to MMA.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make the argument that that's easier to see because he's coming from a positional background.
Yep.
When you can punch somebody in the head, your position's important. It's very hard to punch somebody in the head from the bottom of turtle.
That's right. And yeah, anyone who follows Gordon.
Adopt me and meet your doom.
Yeah, anyone who follows like Gordon Ryan, you know, he's always going off about how, before I'm 30, I'm gonna win every major jiu-jitsu title, IBJJF, and then I'm gonna do MMA and all this stuff. And I'm thinking like, oh my god, like how is this guy gonna do all of this stuff? Like he says he's gonna do it. It's hard to take him seriously at times. The guy's phenomenal.
He's a fantastic athlete, and he's certainly proven his cred in.
Absolutely. But you also have to wonder, like, he's really good at EBI rules, right?
Sure.
Those are rules that are made for him. He has a guard that's almost like, it's really hard to pass his guard. It's really hard to hold him down. Super hard to finish him. And then if it goes into overtime, he's got awesome back control and all that stuff. So it'd be interesting to see him in the gi at the highest level and how he'd do. I mean, my guess would be he wouldn't be a standout, and I think he's a self-advocate of that. He says, you know, I'm not a standout guy in the gi at all.
But he also doesn't dedicate his time towards that.
That's exactly it. I mean, you have to dedicate so much time to that, so how are you going to complete all these tasks? I would be really fascinated to see him in a positional type of game, you know. I was there when he stepped in last minute for Braulio, and he fought Leandro Lo, and you know, he got taken down a few times, and that was sort of the downfall of his grappling versus Leandro Lo, who's, you know, arguably the best in the world.
Sure.
So, and he stepped in on, you know,
no notice.
Like, yeah, so he did pretty freaking good. Yeah, I'm curious to see how he'd do in other rule sets too.
Well, only time will tell. I mean, I've been wrong about people transitioning in and out of the MMA context, and not to say MMA is the be-all and end-all either. I mean, it's a game that's evolving, and people are always trying to game that. Oh yeah, and in
every martial art, in any sport, really, right? People are going to try and win, and that's really what I guess is important.
I suppose some sports in the grappling context that we're most familiar with, because I don't know anything about football. I know that I've talked to people who are really into the nuances of how people are gaming the system in football and how they make.
I'm not the one to talk about that. I have no idea.
We just had a whole bunch of people hang up on this podcast.
Yeah.
To discuss, but.
Yeah. All of my friends can easily spend a Sunday watching several football games, and I can't do it. I think it's a fantastic sport, and I you know, so much strategy and preparation that goes into it, but I just don't have the time to dedicate, especially now. There's no way I can have time, and that's time I'd rather be training. So I can't follow a sport or a particular team, unfortunately. Sorry to all the football people.
If they don't like it, they get their money back for this podcast. So I guess football is an example of a place where they use an arms race between the micromanagement of the rules. Okay, if this part of the football touches this part of the line, then that means this, and an arms race between the people trying to game the system and the establishment trying to counter game the people trying to game the system. And when I think of this in a grappling context, I think of judo, with micromanagement of where you can grip and for how long and what your intent has to be, and let's change the rules again and again and again, so that we keep this ideal vision of what judo should be, which is two people standing upright in big beautiful throws, and let's not allow grabbing of the legs anymore. Let's not allow...
Because wrestlers are good at that.
Exactly. Or sambo guys. When the sambo guys came into judo in the, I want to say 60s and 70s, they cut a bloody swath, like flying arm bars, and over the back belt grips, and the cabarelli type things. There was very rapid rule adjustment.
Yeah.
I heard a friend of mine who was in Kyokushin karate said the same thing. He said, like, back in the day, Kyokushin allowed punches. You know, so in Kyokushin, you and I stand in front of each other, we punch each other in the body and kick each other in the head. Well, they used to, supposedly, I don't know if it's true, allow punches to the head. And then some boxers entered the tournament. Halfway through the tournament, they're like, oh, time out, stop. Okay, new rule, no more punching to the head.
There'll be no punching to the face anymore.
And then I think another rule adjustment they made on the fly was they used to allow grabbing the head and kneeing the head. And then some, like, I don't know, 6'7" African guy with legs that are almost 6'7" long, came in and basically would reach across, grab the head, and knee the Japanese champions in the face. And so again, halfway through the tournament, okay, stop, new rule, no more grabbing the head and kneeing.
Right.
So, but submission grappling is almost the other way. It's like, okay, screw you, we're not going to micromanage what you do.
Yeah.
Or the sub only, rather.
Sub only, yeah.
You know, you want a heel hook? Heel hook. You want arm bar. You want to...
Yeah.
And there's almost like by limiting the number of restrictions, it opened up the game.
Yeah, and like I said, that kind of allows, you know, you to showcase your style, whatever it may be. If you're a top heavy guy and you like to pass the guard and that's your goal, you can do that, but you have to have a submission goal in mind, right? Or if you're on the bottom and you like to, Genkazushi into entanglements and sweeps and stuff like that, it still has to be the common goal of finding the submission. And I think what you mentioned with the other, Kyokushin and Judo is the crossover of different practitioners wanting to compete in that under those rule sets, right? And then so, like you say, the governing bodies want to keep the sport pure, so they change the rules, which I think in the end will detract from it, right? Like what I'd love to see, and I hope people out there agree, is in IBJJF, if you're a black belt, heel hook should be legal. You should be allowed to heel hook at black belt, I think. The whole thing about heel hooks being, this dangerous submission that you can't tell when it's gonna, your leg is in trouble. That's fear mongering. That's trying to spread ignorance over something. Let's not learn that because it's dangerous.
Well, I mean, let's not learn that because it cuts down on big, beautiful open guard work. Is the real answer. Yeah.
I mean, you could say that too. I mean, I would argue that let's not do that because if people get injured, they can't spend more money to sign up for our tournaments. That's sort of another way that I would look at it. And I've talked to several people before, like Don was someone who I talked about, and he just said, no heel hooks at black belt because it's just too dangerous. It's like, I have a club, and I'm going to say it, we teach heel hooks even for the beginners, Of course, all the guard passing and stuff, all the fundamentals is done, but we expose them to those situations early so that they're comfortable with it. Not one heel hook related injury has happened, knock on wood. Not to say it won't happen, no. But I think awareness is your best course of action if you're looking for preventing something.
And at the last Worlds, there were no heel hooks, but there were some pretty mangled feet.
Oh yeah, that toe hold. Yeah, of course, on Homolo, yeah.
I mean, and of course that's a ridiculous state of affairs. So if you're gonna ban heel hooks, fair enough, ban bloody toe holds too.
Oh yeah, I mean, toe holds are super dangerous too.
A toe hold is a heel hook with a different grip.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a twisting, leg submission. I mean, a Kimura is super dangerous.
Sure.
All these moves are really dangerous. I know you want to protect the athletes, but at the highest level, these guys are the best in the world. At that point, it really comes down to, like you mentioned earlier, an arms race. So there's people that are studying, like me, that are studying as much as we can, the leg entanglements and the supposed dark arts. And then there's people that sort of don't want to do that, right? So are you going to move along with the evolution of the sport, and it is evolving every day, or are you going to stay behind and just say, no, like, we're going to just keep these rules?
Worm guard, okay.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Leg entanglement, bad.
Yeah, De La Hiva, okay, and all.
But there were people who thought, like, De La Hiva guard was the end of the world. There were people, I mean, when Draculino started doing spider guard, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, people thought, this is just a stalling position, this is the end of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's proven to be true.
Yeah, and the whole thing about, submission-only grapplers not having chops in a street self-defense situation, try to do something to someone that knows good leg locks. You're gonna end up on the receiving end of a leg lock most of the time. You know what I mean?
99, you can't punch your way out of, because
exactly,
you can't punch your way out of a leg lock, except maybe if the guy's standing and you're on the bottom in sort of a single leg X situation.
Right.
In which case you should hopefully have some ways of knocking them over.
Exactly. Hopefully you've prepared and you have options from there.
So let's just go back to the safety aspect.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we both agree that you can totally screw somebody's leg up with a heel hook.
Yes.
Let's make this just heel hook specific. A heel hook, if you apply a full power heel hook to me, you're more likely to tear my ACL, or it's more likely that I'm going to require surgery than if you do a full power ankle lock to me.
Okay.
Although you can put me in the hospital with an ankle lock too.
Okay.
So how then do you train the dark arts safely?
It's a great question. And working with Rob and sort of seeing how he's taught me, I've been like a sponge, and I absorb a lot of his teaching instruction just because I think he teaches jiu-jitsu in such an awesome way. It's more, the thing that I try and tell our guys is if you are looking to catch people in leg locks, you're going to have a less effective leg lock system. It's more about controlling the position.
So more about catching them in a position.
Yeah, like do you know how to enter into a position and maintain it as they're trying to
so what are the major leg lock positions? Let's just, for the people who are new to this.
Okay, so the major leg lock positions would be ashigarami, which is your standard like straight ankle lock position, right?
The one that everyone's seen.
Yeah. There's the outside ashi, which is a modified version of that, and then there's the 411 or inside senkaku, right? Which is essentially a reap. But it's, my feet are hidden, tucked away, and both of your feet are sort of exposed. Mm-hmm. So those are sort of the main positions to finish from, and then there's, tons of variations and transitionary positions in between.
Butterfly ashi.
Oshiro ashi, all these different things. Yeah. But basically what we teach is, it's not about like catching and finishing. It's more about recognizing the position, maintaining the position, and knowing what to do with the common reactions that your opponent's going to give you.
So you might, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I know that you do this. So you might go and spar the 411 position.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the guy's trying to get out, knowing that you could essentially finish him at any time.
That's right.
But for the sake of the sparring, you're not going to actually apply the heel hook. You're just going to try to maintain the position.
That's right.
Of the
it's incredible. Like we always say, lower ranks shouldn't learn heel hooks and all this stuff, which there may be some argument with that. I think some people shouldn't learn heel hooks because they may have
are crazy. They may have emotional problems.
Emotional problems, or they're spazzy or whatever. Those people have character traits that need to be tailored while they're learning jiu-jitsu. It's not necessarily like all low-level, entry-level people shouldn't learn this. Because I have white belts at my gym that are awesome at defending leg locks and putting on leg locks in a controlled manner,
Mm-hmm.
So if you see someone put on a heel hook and they're grimacing and trying to finish it, yeah, that's a problem, right? But if you're
responsible as a teacher to weed those people out or ban them
or to tailor their game, right, and help them mature as grapplers. But if you show people that, hey, if I grab your leg, you don't have to freak out, right? Like I roll with guys from other clubs sometime, and as soon as I put on an ankle lock without even any pressure, they start tapping because they're like, oh, we don't do those here, or I don't know that stuff. But that's a problem.
They should know that stuff. But as a general principle, if you don't know what the hell's going on and you're a beginner,
right,
and you're worried, tap out. I kind of agree with that, although it's exposed a huge hole in their game.
True, not only that, but does that not just hammer home the fact that they're afraid?
Sure.
Like if I have your leg wrapped up with no pressure, you're not in pain, you don't feel something, and you're just tapping for the hell of it, like that's because someone has told you that these moves are so dangerous and so, to be feared. If you fear something, that's when you're going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. If I put you in an ankle lock, and your reaction is to spaz out of it and spin out of it without actually controlling things, then that's where you get hurt.
The one ACL that I've torn,
yeah,
like not my own. I've never torn my own ACL. I've never injured anybody with leg locks except one guy, and it was me holding an ankle lock.
Yeah. With
putting zero pressure on it, just sitting there.
Yeah.
And not even my legs tied up very tight because he was a beginner, and he spun one way as hard as he could, and then he spun the other way as hard as he could. It's my bad. I should have let go. I should have realized what a doofus he was being. But all of a sudden, he spins as hard as he can, and he screams and starts, gagging essentially because of the pain.
Yeah.
And it turned out his ACL had been torn, and it's like if your foot gets caught in a gopher hole, doing a full ballet pirouette, it's the wrong thing to do.
Don't try and spin out. Yeah.
But it was my fault because I think I was a purple belt at the time, and I should have said, "Hey, look, you're really going to hurt yourself."
Exactly, yeah, and that's the daily challenge that I have as a gym owner and instructor is that I have to be that guy that says, hey, just so you know, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to actually control the feet. We're not trying to, you know, if you're caught in something, I don't want you to tap right away just because you're caught. I want you to like progress through the sequence, but I don't want you to do anything dangerous.
Well, just to jump back to that, now that I think about it, using the more modern leg lock methodologies, most of the time you're controlling two legs anyway.
Yeah, ideally.
So what happened with that guy would have been impossible if I'd been using the more modern methodologies, because they wouldn't have been free to spin.
That's right.
So I wasn't, you could make an argument, I wasn't controlling the position properly.
The free leg, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, like just looking for those positions and really becoming intimate with the positions rather than hunting a submission. That's how at our club leg locks are sort of introduced to people, and that's sort of what our system is backed behind. Is it's in a sense position over submission, right? It's just that we don't need to go in and try and finish the heel hook for the life of us. We get sometimes. You know, I want my guys to do that to me because I want to compete at the highest level I can.
That.
But for the average person, you know, it's more about staying safe at the same time and training tomorrow. So
no, if you're a high level competitor, which you are, then it's like choking the jaw when you're doing the rear naked choke. If some housewife's first jiu-jitsu class and she figures out to keep her jaw down when you're trying to choke her. Like, oh yeah, just put it over her teeth and squeeze
just break her face.
Yeah,
basically.
like that's the wrong thing to do. But if somebody's sparring with you and you're getting ready for the Abu Dhabi trials or something, they should probably be doing that to you.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, again, as a coach, I need to be able to have my guys have that switch, right? I've been really lucky. The group that I'm with, like a lot of the times they'll say, you know, if you start a new gym or whatever, you're stuck with a bunch of new people. And then your training can go down. I mean, I'm not surrounded by world champions. It's not like Autos, but I've been super fortunate that all my guys are really awesome learners and have picked up stuff really quick. I can say pretty confidently that I don't feel that my training has suffered from starting a new club. And I find that a lot of higher level guys are actually visiting me. So I'm getting more... I'm getting more people that are at the blue or purple belt level coming out to my club rather than, you know, the average Joe off the couch, which is what I want. Like, I want to get more of those guys into my gym, but at the same time, it's the guys that are already a bit seasoned that want to come and train with me, which as a competitor for me is awesome because I get, you know, awesome guys that already understand grappling.
Of a varying degree of backgrounds. And this guy comes from a 10th planet guy who's always like trying to put both his legs behind his own neck, and you have these guys are more traditional Carlson Gracie guys, and they're just gonna try and smash.
Judo guys, lots.
Oh, really? You got judo? There are judo guys who are interested in the lower body game.
Well, it's a little bit trickier for judo guys, I think, to get into the lower body game. But I have judo, you know, some guys that do judo in their past, and then they come out and check this stuff out. They're like, "Whoa!"
And it's not fair because you're not just a lower body guy. I mean, it's
not at all. No, like I said, like I practice judo every week, and I practice wrestling every week, and it's all just to complement my jiu-jitsu though. Like, I'm not looking to go compete in a wrestling tournament, although I will be looking to compete in a judo tournament. Definitely. Probably by the end of this year, I'm going to do another judo tournament. Last one I did was a few years ago as a green belt. I won a match and I lost a match and I had no idea what I was doing. But I've practiced since then, just working with Mike Lee and Darko Haraben, who teaches judo on Mondays.
Right.
Those guys have
and
awesome.
Mike Lee, I mean, I've known him forever.
Mike Lee's
judo guy and jiu-jitsu guy.
Judo and jiu-jitsu black belt. He's my business partner. He's taught me so much about takedowns and transitions, and you know, even though I haven't competed in judo in years, I've still been training it. So I'm ready to go in there and try to win a, you know,
flying Kanabasami, I think, is the way to go.
Well, you know, I heard something in judo, like even if you go for a flying attack and they tap as you're putting on the submission, like
I cannot keep track of what's legal and not legal.
I was told that if you flying armbar someone and then they tap, what is it? Or if you hold the submission too long, you will get DQ'd. But the definition of holding the submission too long is like I don't know, they tap, if they tap before you hit the ground or something, then the ref will consider it that you were, I guess, trying to intend to injure.
There have been lots of horrific. I mean, judo is a sport of horrific injuries. I hate to admit it.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's the worst injuries of any combat sport, I think. And there's been lots of dicks in judo who've like,
oh yeah,
I'm not going to win this match unless I break your arm. So that like whole standing wakigatame.
Yeah.
It's not done as a. I mean, back when it was legal, I think it's not legal now. I don't know. I mean, there have been people who've, like, their goal has been to break your arm standing so quickly that you don't have time to tap.
Yeah, and it's true. If you ever do newaza with a judo guy, everything is what we would call as jiu-jitsu people spazzy or
it's a very different rhythm. Like
it really is.
Right away, you can feel that the
yeah.
guy's done a lot of judo and has been tempered by jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, like when I used to train at New West Judo when I was a purple belt, and I didn't know anything about judo, like forward break falls, things like that. I was so bad at it, but on the ground I was pretty decent compared to all of them. So I was rolling with this.
Was that Antonio Guzman out there?
No.
Okay.
No, at New West.
Yeah.
No, it was Kevin Thornlow.
Okay, I've heard the name, but
yeah, and but it wasn't him this time. But I was rolling with this guy, and like I had him in the. We were practicing newaza, and I was in his guard, and I was like, okay, I'm doing pretty good. I'm used to jiu-jitsu guys when they go for jujigatame or armbar, they're pivoting their hips nicely, their hips come off the mat, the leg goes over the head. This guy literally just threw his leg over my head, like straight on, and he was so big that my arm, it worked. Like my arm got caught. It was the ugliest armbar ever, but my arm popped. And I was thinking like, wow, because of the rule set that judo gives you, you have to just snap submissions on. And it doesn't
except when you're flying through the air.
Yeah, that's right. Then you got to stop.
Yeah, you got to do them in slow motion when you're in the air.
Give them just enough time to tap. Yeah, you know, the rules make it so that you don't have enough time. So everything has to be fast in judo on the ground, and it's different. Rolling with a judo person is totally different, as I'm sure many people understand.
I think the same philosophy drove things like shoot wrestling back in the day, or shoot boxing, because in Japan, you know, there were many iterations of the whole pancrase, basically fusing striking and grappling, but a lot of them were, you could punch the guy, kick the guy, take him down, but then you had to go for a submission right away. You only had a limited time on the ground. So it encouraged this whole Hail Mary type of...
That's just
like
catch style.
Exactly.
That's where catch style would reign supreme, right? And now we have you know, all these high level grapplers that are doing sub only, and they have so many answers for all the different transitions, and that's sort of how Rob has developed his system. Is like, okay, if I do this, what would you do? Okay, you'd get into base in here. Okay, well now I have to have an answer for that, right? So instead of catching, right, if I go to an outside ashi on Rob and I try and heel hook me, he's gonna laugh at me. Like I gotta cook him a little bit. I have to make sure that I make the position work and have the proper mechanics in place before I can finish. I can't just throw on a heel hook and expect that it's gonna work against someone that's at such a high level, right? So again, I look at it exactly like position over submission, right? I think catching style, like catch wrestling's great. The mean art or whatever, like jiu-jitsu's the gentle art, and that's kind of the mean art. It has its place, but at the same time, you know, you put that against a sophisticated leg locker, it's going to be really tough for the catch wrestler to leg lock the leg locker, I think.
Yeah. Well, taking it a bit away from the lower body game, why do you think that there's been this giant explosion of no-gi grappling? No-gi for points, no-gi without points. Is it just a reaction to essentially, you can make an argument that Brazilians have dominated the gi since forever and still essentially continue to dominate the gi. There hasn't been this big contingent of black belt world champions from outside of Brazil at the Mundials or the Pans. Well, they wouldn't be world champions if they were at the Pans, but you know what I mean. You know, you can count them on one hand, really.
I think a lot of it has to do with, like, of course, social media and things like that, where it's easier to watch these events now, and events like Metamoris, Polaris, you know, you could even argue MMA, even though you don't see a ton of leg locks. But if people see leg locks, you know, for me, when I saw them, I was like, oh, like, I want to learn that. That's really cool. For me, I always want to learn something. I always want to evolve. Sure. I don't just want to stay here and like do one thing. So for me, and I'm sure many other people, they saw Gary Tonin heel hooking people and Eddie Cummings heel hooking people with seemingly with ease, right? So it's like, well, there's something there.
Or
clearly.
Paul Harris in MMA or Imanari in MMA.
Exactly, right?
You don't leave the room to go to the bathroom when those guys are fighting.
Exactly.
Anything can happen, and it usually does.
Yeah, and when it's a smooth transition, like if you watch Eddie Cummings' highlight reel, it's ridiculous, and it's so rehearsed. It looks like he's doing the same thing every time, and it works every time. So how can I ignore that? Yeah. Right? For me, I want to learn that, and I think that's what other people are doing is they're seeing that, they're seeing the system that's sort of coming to light. And certain people know it and certain people don't. And if you know it, good chance you're going to finish the guy. So I want to be on the side of the people that know it.
Well, we're at this weird stage in the evolution of grappling where there is no black belt who's thought about competing at the Worlds, who doesn't know how to defend the rear naked choke, doesn't know how to defend the lapel choke, doesn't know how to defend the armbar, doesn't have a whole bunch of triangle escapes that more or less work for him. But you do have high-level black belts who've got no idea how to apply a heel hook properly, how to get out of one if it's sunk with any level of conviction or progression of the position.
Yeah.
So you've got this extreme skill discrepancy. It's kind of like the early UFCs in a sense that Hoist Gracie could go in there and using a game plan that looked pretty damn similar every time. Pretend to punch, clinch, outside trip, go to mount, hit the guy who turned his back, choke him. That worked for a whole bunch of
Right.
That was the core strategy for then eventually you had to start fighting for your back as well. And there was a whole other aspect to this jiu-jitsu stuff.
It's an arms race.
It's an arms race.
Like,
or a legs race.
A legs race, yeah.
An arms race for the legs.
I mean, you could say the same thing. Like there's so many there's high-level black belts that don't do takedowns.
Right.
They don't know throws.
Sure.
And that's fine.
And the rule sets have allowed that.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, I've been saying forever. I think IBJJF should give, maybe have like a high takedown and a low takedown. Like if you do like a Seanagi or an Uchimata, you get 3 points or 4 points. Make it so that people want to.
If the points that for street realism, there's a big giant difference between doing a little trip or a low single where the guy slowly falls over versus getting tossed over his head on the pavement.
Yeah, and you're going to see people that want to stand up and deter from just going in.
Of course, that'll just make people pull guard even more because now they're all these people working these high amplitude throws.
True.
I'm not going there.
True.
They'll say.
But I mean, I think honestly, you could argue to say we already kind of have that.
Sure.
I think a lot of people go through their jiu-jitsu journey and they kind of stick to their guns and they don't want to learn takedowns. They don't want to learn, or they'll just have like 1 or 2 takedowns.
And in their defense, regardless of whether leg locks are dangerous or not, I'll go completely all in and say there's essentially no safe way to train takedowns, especially judo takedowns. If you train that, the odds of injury go up. I mean, you go to a judo tournament, it's not unusual for 2 or 3 people to go to the hospital on a spine board with a neck collar on. That's normal.
It's true. And
all of my severe orthopedic injuries have come from judo or takedowns or a takedown situation. All of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I wish I could argue with it. I can't.
1, 2, 3. Off the top of my head, at least 6 surgeries related to takedowns. So I totally understand why you're like, get my guard because I don't feel safe.
It's just safer. Yeah. And I think we're gonna continue to see guys pulling guard until they're never gonna penalize pulling guard, nor do I advocate for that. But until you see something change where that makes people want to go for takedowns, you're only gonna see certain demographics of people going for takedowns. Usually bigger guys go for takedowns, or even you could argue masters do takedowns. At the Master Worlds, you'll see guys sort of standing a little bit.
What do you think that is? That's not something I've noticed, but I trust your assessment of that.
I mean, I don't know. I think maybe
less confident in their guards, less flexible,
or maybe they just come from more traditional backgrounds that maybe have throws involved. I think at any high level IBJJF division, you're going to see guys just go right in and pull guard right away. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people see that and they kind of frown upon it and they're like, oh, what is this? This. look what's happened to jiu-jitsu. Like,
Yeah, but there's nothing worse than watching two guys do terrible judo for. I'd rather see
oh yeah,
two guys do half interesting double guard pull than watching two guys do terrible judo for 5 minutes.
Or like as Rob says, like if you watch ADCC, you'll see two of the highest level grapplers in the world, and they'll just have like a high school wrestling match. Neither of them wants to, commit to a takedown. It's just like slapping for 10 minutes or whatever. So, yeah.
Let's get the party started.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why people pull guard right away, is because they want to get to a position where they can start working their stuff, right? And I think that's what we all want to see. And when people say that, sport jiu-jitsu is bullshit, won't work in the street, like, try and do something to someone who knows open guard. Try to do something.
Yeah, it was Ryan Hall when I was talking to him on a very early podcast about 50-50, and I guess I was essentially shitting on 50-50 a little bit, and he said, well, to the extent that it's resulted in stalling, I apologize. On the other hand, he says, I can't think of a better position to put somebody in a self-defense situation. If you put me in 50-50 and your only goal is to stall, and I can't extricate myself because I'm some doofus, not much I can do to you. You can hold me in 50-50 for a very long time and stay fairly safe, unless I pull out a knife out to stab your feet. But other than that, or a gun. And you can, if you know what you're doing, you can destroy my leg at will.
Mm-hmm.
So I got readjusted my attitude a little bit. There is street efficacy to 50-50 guard.
Totally. And even you could say like spider guard. Like if
Sure.
someone has a jacket and they're trying to rain down punches and you grab their collar or their sleeve, it's going to work,
Exactly.
Especially if the person on
Unless
the
you
bottom...
go around wearing Speedos all the time.
or rash guards.
Yeah.
Like...
That's why John Danaher does it.
That's right.
He's worried about spider guard
in the street. Even a thing like De La Hiva, which is, considered to be a sport jiu-jitsu technique. I think it has its applications. Like in the street, try and do something to someone who understands De La Hiva guard and is quite proficient at open guard concepts. You're gonna have a hell of a time.
Sure. It might not work in an MMA context where you're facing another highly skilled fighter.
Exactly.
But if we're talking about somebody who's, say, a high-level blue belt or purple recreational, so he trains 2 or 3 times a week, and he likes the De La Hiva guard, and he gets in a fight and he gets knocked down, and the other guy is a real tough guy, bigger than him, stronger than him, gets in street fights all the time, and gets put in a De La Hiva guard, he's going to be screwed. He's not some MMA guy who knows, I got to clear the hooks here, and then I got to, pass the guard and do a ground. No, you have a clue. And if you're wearing a jacket, you're totally screwed.
Exactly. So I think people that shit on sport jiu-jitsu in a street self-defense or they say, oh, look what happened to jiu-jitsu, it's not the same as it used to be. I mean, you can't really say that. Mm-hmm. As we all know, if you train jiu-jitsu and you know a fraction and then you get into a confrontation against someone who doesn't know anything, very high chance you're going to do okay. There's
no sure thing, but man, there's a lot of white belts, 2-stripe, 3-stripe white belts. I've shown guys a little bit, and we're talking 3 sessions together. Session 1, better be on top than on bottom. Session 2, don't turn your back. Session 3, if the guy does turn his back, choke him out. Put your hooks in and choke him out. That level of sophistication. And then you watch them, play fight with other guys, and they just destroy them.
They tune them. Yeah, I know. That's the magic of jiu-jitsu.
So you and I should have stopped training after, that takes how long? That takes a week or 2?
Yeah.
And, it's the world's simplest game plan, really. And then we get in all this other fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have coming up for competitions? Anything now?
Yeah, so next weekend, I'm grappling Chad Shaw.
Oh, that's right, it's a super fight.
Yeah, from Gracie Baja, Vancouver. Chad is, he's a beast. He's one of the best competitors in the city, if not the best competitor in the gi.
It's a gi super fight?
No, this is a no-gi match, and the rules are rolling submissions, so it's in the Battlefield Fight League cage. It's during an MMA event, and I've competed for them once before. I fought Kabir, and basically what it is the submissions... I think it's an 8-minute match or a 10-minute match, and the submissions just keep on. If you submit someone, the match restarts and the time keeps going.
That's scary.
It's strange. So if I tap out, then we have to reset, And then as the match progresses throughout the time, the submissions become worth more. So near the end of the match, the submissions are worth more than at the beginning.
I don't like that at all. I'm going to go on, because of course the strategy there is break his bloody leg. Oh.
Well,
or injure him.
Yeah, like for me, at first when I heard this, and I know a few other people that said, oh, these are kids' rules. Like, these are rules that they give kids so that they get more competition experience, right? I was kind of on that end of thinking. Like, I thought maybe it detracts a little bit from a submission. In a match, you submit the guy, it's over, right? That's how we're used to it. But at the same time, people get more grappling for their money. It kind of keeps things. It was different when I watched it live and I competed live. I'm like, okay, this is actually not bad. Like, this is kind of it's kind of interesting seeing how the time changes the matches and seeing like how many submissions can someone get on someone. And so it has, again, it's just a different rule set. It has its own place. It's not my, I'm not one way or the other for it. I'm kind of impartial.
You've done it once?
I've done it once with Kabir, and it was fun. I got a few submissions, and I really enjoyed it. I like it because it means I get more mat time.
Right.
That's why I like it. And it's not the first time I fought Chad. Chad absolutely kicked my ass at a CBJJF tournament in the gi in the absolute finals of the brown belt. On points, killed me. I think it was in the 40s. It was disturbing because every time he would pass my guard, and then I would re-guard, and then of course he'd pass again, then he'd mount, then I'd re-guard, then he'd pass and mount again, and just racked up the points. And I was just like trying to fight for my life, basically. I survived, but now it's different because we've added, it's open rules, leg locks, neck cranks, spine contortions, all that stuff's legal, plus there's no gi, and I've been practicing mostly, I can't say practicing mostly no-gi, but competing mostly no-gi recently. So I think it's going to be an interesting clash of styles. Plus, he's probably a good 10, 15 pounds bigger than me, and he's like a specimen. He's a full-time competitor, and I have a full-time job as well. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting match for sure. And then the day after that,
short notice, really your only plan here is implants. I think calf implants,
pec
implants,
butt implants.
Yeah.
And then the day after, I actually have a match with a friend of mine named Hayden Francis, who's a brown belt from Roll Jiu-Jitsu in Vancouver, and the loser shaves their head.
Oh, you're going to get rid of those flowing locks that you flaunt to like make me feel bad? We'll taking it down to the bone?
We'll see how it goes. That's going to be in the gi, actually.
Okay.
So we'll see how it translates over. And I believe that's an IBJJF rule match.
Oh wow.
So I want to do all different types of grappling. And I'm putting my hair on the line. So I suggested, why don't we put the hair on the line, because his hair is long, kind of similar to mine, and I thought it would just be more of a fun thing, And then right after the loser, we take out a chair and a tarp, just shave the head right then and there. But we agreed if it's a referee's decision or if it's an injury, there's no one shaving their head. So
all right.
I think that's fair.
No, I think I covered most of the contingencies.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with that. If people want to train with you in the Greater Vancouver area, On Guard BJJ.
Yeah, On Guard Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Pitt Meadows.
Okay.
Come check us out. Free week
You're
trials.
on Facebook, you're on the internet.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, my athlete page, Matt Kwan BJJ, and of course, the On Guard Facebook page.
Awesome.
Just check it out.
You're willing to fly anywhere, anytime, fight anyone under any rules, as far as I can tell.
Pretty much, yeah. I'd like to have as many super fights as I can, and then also, not in the not so far distance. I have a match scheduled in Nova Scotia with Oliver Taza on July 29th at West Coast, or Chokes by the Ocean, I think it's called. So that's probably the biggest fight of my life.
He's really good.
He's killing it right now with the leg lock system that they have over there, and he just won he just punched his card to ADCC by winning the ADCC trials in Europe. So he's going to I think it's in Finland this year, and just to even be considered to grapple that guy is an honor, and I'm a huge fan of his, so I can't wait to test myself there too.
Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Good luck with your training,
Thank you
competing, and parenting, and all the rest of it.
Oh yeah, thanks.